Yeah, so I just want to say a big thanks to everyone that has subscribed and started following me, made a comment, liked, disliked. Yeah, it's been great, and I really appreciate everyone's input. I don't know where this channel is going to go. I'm just having a bit of fun, but everyone has been super cool and everyone's been really supportive. And yeah, again, big thank you.
Thank you.
The community's actually, the YouTube community is pretty cool and pretty supportive. Everyone, I guess, is in the same boat, especially, you know, just amateurs like me. I have no idea. I've got an iPhone and a DJI, I think it is. It's like one of those fandangle things that hang off your phone and follows the object around. So, man, this thing's never seen a panic. So, geez. I'm sure it hasn't. Anyway, we'll find a spot here that's going to look good for a bit of a walk around. All right, I've actually had to move spots because it was just super windy, and you just had that wind in the background and it was super annoying, and I couldn't do that to you guys. So just heading down the road. There's a little spot up here. Can't drive for shit. Yeah, there's a little spot up here, and it's a little bit protected, so let's hope. It's okay. One-handed driving and videoing. Respect to all of those that do. Hey guys, alrighty, let's try this again. I think this is like the third time that I've tried to video this truck. I just get a lot of wind here, and I've changed spots. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this works. Alrighty, so let's let's kick off with a bit of history on this truck, and why I bought it, and I guess the reasons behind, you know, my fascination with highboys. It all started, I guess, when I was a kid. I would have been about 12 years old, I'd say. I was living, obviously, in my local town. It was only a small town, and there was this fella that had a beige 74 Highboy. And obviously I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew it was bloody cool. Now, he used to cruise around town. He was a farmer, he was a rancher. He'd have his hat on. He'd be occasionally towing a horse float. But he had this beige coloured 74 Highboy. Now, it had a grumble to it, so I remember it had a V8. And look, I always just loved that thing. It was just it just made my day every time I saw it. And I was only a kid, just a small tacker. But you know, that thing always stuck with me. It was always a bit of a dream to own a Highboy, and in particular a Dentside 74. This thing had, from what I remember, it had steelies, definitely had steelies. It had sort of tall skinnies. It was just an original old girl. And look, that would have been in the mid 80s, right? So, you know, we're talking, probably would have only been like 10 years old. So you know, it was he'd obviously probably bought it new, and he used it for his ranch, for his farm. I mean, on a bit of a side note, you know, Highboys were available in Australia. They were super expensive, so they weren't that popular. You had like the Toyotas and you know, Japanese market sort of strong in Australia at the time. So you know, buying a Ford big pickup or truck for probably, I would think, double the price was generally out of the question. So from, you know, being a kid, seeing that thing around my local town, it was just one of those vehicles that I'd always, I guess, just, you know, check on the classifieds, and you know, it was one of those dream cars, I guess you might say. And on top of that, given that we don't have many in Australia, it was a little bit more desirable for me because you just don't see them, you know, locally. So it was just that a little bit more desirable for me. So then, how did I get this thing? Well, I guess it goes back to well, look, let's start at 2013, I think it was. I was over in the US going to Speed Week over in Utah there, and unfortunately got rained out and it got cancelled. So a buddy and I headed back to LA, and we thought we'd check out some speed shops. One of those speed shops, or hot rod shops, whatever you know, a bunch of different shops, I should say. One of those shops was Old Crow, Bobby Green, Burbank, I believe. Now, I walked in there and we had a look around, super nice guy, and there was this roadster in the corner. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet, who's that? He said, oh, that's Dell. And Dell wasn't there at the time, and I said, look, is it for sale? And Bobby's like, look, I don't know. So I spoke to Dell, and we worked out a price, and the roadster was mine. Now, Dell, if for those that don't know, it's Delmo's Speed on Instagram. He does really high-end chassis and builds. Go and check him out. Super cool guy. So that roadster came back to Australia. I got it on the road, drove the shit out of it. It was a great fun car, a little 8BA in it, traditional style roadster. It was super cool. Met a lot of cool people, a lot of good friends come out of that car. But look, I sold it. I think maybe not last year, the year before. Yeah, and I was sort of looking for a new project, a new car, and for some reason, and I'm not sure what kicked off the fascination again with, or I guess surfaced this Highboy passion, but I started looking through the Facebook marketplace posts in the US. I did look locally here in Australia, but you know, Highboys here in Australia are either way overpriced and super rusty, or one or the other. So I wasn't going to go there. Anyway, so yeah, looking around in the US, and you know, there was a lot around, or there is a lot around, right? But they're generally pretty beat up. They're a working truck. They're a working man's truck. So I was thinking one day, I'll hit up Dell. I haven't spoken to Dell for a while. He's a truck man. He knows people. So I PM'd him on Instagram. I'm like, hey dude, how are you? Haven't spoken to you for a while. Looking for a Highboy, and you know, just wondering if you know of any around. I reckon within a minute, no less, messages me back, and with a photo of this thing, and says, this is in my driveway right now. And I was like, shit, no. I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, are you serious? You know, 74 Highboy, and on top of that, a Survivor. I'm like, fuck, man, that's unheard of, right? So as it turns out, look, it wasn't actually Dell's, it was a buddy of his, and look, I won't go into that because it's probably not a story for me to tell. And I said to Dell, is it for sale? And he said, look, it's not officially for sale, but the guy that owns it, you know, might be interested, so I'll have a chat with him. Anyway, cutting a long story short, Dell obviously did that. I got in contact with the owner. It was one of those opportunities where I'm like, look, it wasn't what I wanted to spend. Obviously, it was a lot more. But how many times do you come across a you know, an original 74, mostly original paint, 43,000 miles, you know, truck that's just not been, you know, beat up and abused. It's just a super rare item, right? And so I had to buy it. You know, the link that Dell sent me to the truck was sorry, yeah, it was a link that he sent me. He did send me a photo of this truck and a link. The link was actually when the previous owner bought it. It was on an online sort of auction site, and it had all those, you know, high-res images, all the info, all the documentation and Marty report and everything like that. So I sort of got a really you know, a really good insight into the truck really quickly. So, you know, obviously that helped with the purchase decision, but instantly I sort of knew, like, you know, I've got to have this thing. This is you know, this is a rare, cool truck. And I imported it from the US back here to Australia. The process took about 8 to 12 months all up, so it was a long process. Post-COVID, it's always a bit of a mission getting things shipped, as I'm sure we all know, especially, you know, vehicles and big vehicles. No damage. It goes through a lot of different areas throughout the process: customs, quarantine, cleaning. Generally, all those areas have their challenges, and vehicles get damaged often. Lucky for me, this thing didn't have any damage at all, so super stoked on that. So let's do a bit of a quick walk around on some details and just some basics of this thing. Look, one thing I love about this truck is just the originality of it. You know, all the badges, all the hardware, all the chrome, the polished alloy. It's just really good condition. You know, there's no mismatched screws or rusty screws. It's just you know, it's just been well looked after. It's an XLT F250, so you know, Ranger. So it's got all the jewelry, all the chrome trim. I haven't done a lot to it, really. I've just really done what was required to get it on the road here in Australia. I did put these wheels and tyres on it. And for those that have asked, I'll just go through those right now. So these are Samson's M&S's, so mud and snow. They're a 916, tall, skinny, you know, military style tyre, I guess. The wheels are Dorman's. They're basically from Summit. They're all like $40 each. So I got them powder coated white. The truck, when I bought it, actually came with a roll bar and slots, 16.5-inch slots. Now I believe those two items were dealer optioned. So this thing came out with those, I guess, second day options, right? I took them off the truck. I was just going, you know, in a different direction, hence the steelies and the knobbies. But they're obviously staying with the truck because it is it is part of the truck. They are part of the truck. The truck at one point did have a smash at the front. You can actually see a bit of discoloration. I got a lot of paperwork with the truck, and there actually is some documentation showing some smash repairs in the I think mid-80s or something like that. So it has had a hit. But apart from that, it's, like I said, it's mostly original paint. There's a few scratches, and look, it's certainly not perfect. But it's, you know, it's original. And it's obviously been well looked after. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've been driving it a bit. My wife and I head out occasionally. We'll go and hang out with some mates, and we'll go to a pub, have a meal, just do a bit of cruising. In terms of driveline, the thing's pretty much stock. It's a Highboy, so it's not lifted. It's factory high essentially. It does have a Dana 60 at the front, so they call them a snow fighter. That's in the Marty report, so it's a pretty cool item actually. Look, everything's been gone through, new shocks, brakes, everything's been not upgraded, but reconditioned or replaced. Power assist has been redone, which is always a bit of a pain. It's hard to find someone that can actually do that. All these things that I don't have to worry about for once, which is great. Divorce transfer case, of course, that's a Highboy thing. A Highboy is basically a 67 through to 77.5. They have a divorce transfer case. The chassis rails are a little bit different to a normal F truck. I believe they're a little bit narrower, so you can't actually fit your normal fuel tank between the rails, hence the fuel tank behind the front seat, or the only seat. So there's a few telltale signs to identify Highboy. Maybe I can go through that in another video. But driveline, as she was back in '74. To the interior. Interior is pretty much stock. Few differences that you might notice, but overall, as she was back in the day. Someone did install a stereo, which I believe is like an 80s stereo. Got the old amp, equalizer, a head unit there, which is it's a Craig stereo. I'm not sure, I don't know anything about them, but I will try to get that going. Well, it actually is going. I've just got to reconnect the speakers. They sat sort of directly behind your head, so that was a bit uncomfortable. I'm just rerouting those. Someone's unfortunately screwed the door trims on, which is a bit of a shame. The windscreen wipers didn't work when I got the truck, so I pulled the dash apart looking for the issue. It took me a long time to find that. It was I was scratching my head for ages. The wiper motors in these are actually not firewall side, they're actually dash side, so they're behind that the temperature control unit. So I had to pull the whole dash apart. It wasn't actually the wiper motor itself, which was good. It ended up being the module, the black module that sits behind the wiper switch there, because it's got a factory intermittent wiper system or option. So what it was, after many hours and scratching the head, the noggin, there was actually so I actually ended up taking it to an auto electrician. I can't claim that I fixed it. He was scratching his head for a long time too, and he ended up pulling that black box apart, and there's like a little circuit board in there, and he just had a close look at some of those solders, and there was some cracks. So he's like, let's just solder those up. As soon as he did that, it worked straight away. So anyone that's got a non-working intermittent wiper setup, and I think they made those all the way through to the early 90s, and they're the same. Check that black box, open that up, and have a really close look at the solders, and you'll see like a very fine crack, or if you do, I should say, then that's what your issue is. Solder them up, should be good to go. The other thing you might notice, so I actually, while I had the dash apart, I cleaned everything up. A lot of dust and bits and pieces, and gave it a good spit and polish. The other thing you'll notice is the steering wheel. So this is a non-US steering wheel. It's an Australian Ford XB steering wheel. It's the same spline, it fitted straight on. I was in a bit of a rush to get this thing on the road. It did come with the sports steering wheel, so that went out the door. I sourced this thing off eBay. It was actually a pretty mint find. like I said, fitted straight on, which was great. Only difference being Ford XBs had the horn on the stem. I'm not sure if it was on the left or the right, but yeah, you basically push in the stem and it would sound the horn. Whereas obviously the US F trucks, and I actually think the Australian ones, F trucks were on the stem as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. But the US ones obviously had the horn in the center, and I had to convert this to center horn sounding. But yeah, look, you know, apart from that, she's just Dicky Dye original carpet. Still got the original, you know, unworn plastic protector under there. Yeah, so let's have a look under the bonnet, under the hood. Alrighty. So the story goes with this thing. The original owner dropped a nut or a bolt down the carby or manifold and blew the engine up, blew the original 360 up. Now, the owner was friends with Carroll Shelby and ended up putting a 427 in it, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, he could never get that thing running right, so it sat. He ended up just parking this truck and it sat for like 25 years, I think it was, or something. Hence the originality of this old girl. Now, I'm assuming, you know, it was sold. Another owner put this 360 in it. Sorry, 390, this is a 390. She's all rebuilt. I've got all the documentation, all the paperwork for it, which is pretty cool. New radiator. Little Brock intake. New Holly. New Dizzy. Everything's pretty much been gone through in this truck, which is pretty cool. They've done the brakes, master cylinder, brake lines. So it's really now for me to enjoy. It's pretty stock. It's got a bit of a cam in it. But you know, it's a good strong motor. I do want to put an original air cleaner back on it. I'd assume the flow on those things are pretty ordinary, but you know, I think it just finished off the look. Yeah, so that's about it for the old girl, for the walk around. I hope you enjoyed that. Just want to say another thanks for all your likes, your comments, and subscribing. I really appreciate your support. You guys are legends. Thanks again.